Do you have a paranormal story you want to share on Night Dreams Talk Radio? You could be a guest. Email us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com.
You can advertise your business on Night Dreams Talk Radio, and you will be heard worldwide. Why not contact us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com.
You're listening to my friend Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio, the best in paranormal radio.
Well, Joe, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah, well, I had enough time to get another bottle of tea. Anyway, things like Antarctica, I'm just wondering what could be buried under that. You know, the rate it is thawing out, I got a funny feeling we might find some interesting things, well, in the ground there.
You know, about 3 years ago, an adventurer fellow who's been everywhere wanted me to go to Antarctica with him, and we were making plans. I was looking into it, and we had a plan and all that, but it just didn't work out. You know, it's not that easy to go down there and do something. But I know they found saber-toothed cats. I know they found dinosaurs. I know they found tropical plants. A lot of times the land is, we always just see the ice, but there's at least part of the time, if not all the time, there's rock layers and land exposed. And okay, it's people are so worried about Alaska thawing out, you know, and Antarctica thawing out. Well, it didn't used to be frozen. What if we go back to the wonderful past before people came in and ruined the world? Let's go back to the Mammoth days when it's just wonderful, okay? That's what they say. Well, Antarctica would be no ice. There'd be no ice in Alaska. And what will be, I don't know what to do everywhere else, but if you thawed Alaska out, you would have one of the most amazing garden spots on Earth. That soil up there is so rich and grows things, you know, huge cabbages and everything else in the short time they have. So what would happen in Antarctica? If you had saber-toothed cats and dinosaurs down there, it wasn't a waste-howling wilderness. It was a tropical area. What happened? Well, do you get back to the asteroid thing? Let's say that actually happened, maybe several of them. There used to be something around the Earth, and I'm not trying to get into a flat Earth, round Earth thing here, but I'll go with the round Earth thing because it's what I'm familiar with. There apparently was some sort of a canopy, and a lot of people don't like that term, but there was something around the Earth that kept the temperature pretty much tropical everywhere, and subtropical on the where we have the poles, which may not have actually been there then. And something happened to that. It broke up, and it decompressed the atmosphere, which probably is what formed a lot of the limestone in the world, which caused it to turn, the water turned to stone, and encapsulated, they say there's half of the oxygen in the air is actually in the limestone. If you could free the oxygen from the limestone, we'd have twice as much oxygen. And if you put the canopy or whatever it was up there around the Earth again and recompress the atmosphere, you'd have faster healing, faster plant growth, longer life, more nutritious food, and et cetera. And so that's what it used to be. What happened? Well, that canopy got broken up by an asteroid, the fist of God, we don't know. I'm not even sure what it was, but something held the world in a terrarium. And so I'm all for thawing out Antarctica and Alaska. Let the mud flow down, you know. We'll work itself out. Maybe Australia will get wet again.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's one thing I was thinking, too. You know, back at the dinosaur time, the air oxygen was so rich. You know, that's another thing, too, we were talking about on the show this past weekend, that, you know, dinosaurs could not exist in our day and time because of the oxygen level. I mean, it's not anywhere as rich as it was in the dinosaur time. And being as rich as it was, it allowed them to grow to the sizes they grew.
Yeah, I think that's the point. I think they do live in this atmosphere, but I don't think they're as active. I don't think they grow as long or as tall. They're just not. The atmosphere is not conducive to producing the big dinosaurs we had before the worldwide weather change. And I think there are living dinosaurs. I've talked to a lot of people that report them, and again, there's no reason for them to make these stories up. They're all too consistent to sound like someone's making up a story, and they haven't read books, out in the Amazon and places like that. They don't. It's not something they saw on TV.
Well, what have you heard about these creatures? I mean, the stories what type of dinosaurs have they seen?
There was a missionary couple, a white guy from Mississippi, married an Amazonian lady, and they were up here, I guess, doing something. They came into my museum. We're looking around, and they said, do you have any books on dinosaurs? And I go, yeah, I do, but I don't really have any for sale. And I said, what do you need? He said, well, her dad killed one, and we want to go back with a book and show him, have him pick the one out that he killed. Well, what he killed, by their description, was something like an allosaur or a T-Rex, about 8 or 10 feet tall, that was colored black. And he was out in the jungle, according to his daughter, and with his bow and arrow, there was sort of a clearing there. He saw a pig, a peccary or something. He drew down on it, and when he let the arrow go, and it must have been a fairly long, powerful bow, it went straight to the pig. Well, before it got to the pig, something like an allosaur reached out of the woods, out of the bush, grabbed the pig in its mouth, and the arrow hit this thing somewhere in the head, in the ear, I guess, severed his, went right to his spinal cord or something, and killed him. So the guy took off, went back to the village, terrified. 3 days later, neighbors came to the village saying, man, why does the jungle smell so bad? And this guy said, well, I killed this thing. I must have a name for it. So they go back out there, and here's this dead dinosaur laying there with this pig in its mouth.
Oh, wow. How big was it? Did they describe how big?
Well, big enough for a peccary. These peccaries are probably 100 pounds, not very big like a collie. From what I could gather, the description is about 8 or 10 feet tall, which would be not very big. That's not a big allosaur, not a big T-Rex type animal. And the other thing he said was there's this one that's got a fat body, a long neck, and a long tail, and it's also black. And they didn't give a height, but I gather it wasn't. They would, if it's really, really tall, they'd have said so. They said, when you see one of those things, you get away from it. And people say, no, well, they died out 141 million years ago. And you go, no, not over there. And if you're within 100 feet of them, and they make this certain bark or this sound that they can put out, they said it momentarily paralyzes you. You can't move, and they come and get you.
Oh, wow! So you're their snack. So that's how they get their prey, then.
Well, or maybe they don't eat you. Maybe they just get you, hurt you, make you leave them alone. We don't know, because they didn't say they ever ate anybody. We don't know. But over in Peru, there's a highly controversial thing over there called the Ica stones. I've reproduced 4 or 5 of them. I have a real one in the museum that a guy loaned me. And they're made out of mostly andesite, which is a very heavy stone, but it carves pretty easily. And they would take these andesite cobbles about as big as half a grapefruit, and some of them up to being as big as a chair. They're big, they're like 2 feet square. And they would coat them with a black tar or paint or something, and then engrave them. And, they'd engrave all kinds of stuff, medical procedures, plants, animals that we know about, and then all these dinosaurs interacting with man. And so there are 2 collections in Peru, and one of them has been older than the other. They weren't popular at the time. They weren't like a collector's item. This doctor just started accepting them as payment for his doctoring of these poor Paracans that lived out there near these graveyards. And supposedly there was a big flood back in 1960 or somewhere in there. And they do have floods over there. It never rains, but they'll occasionally have a terrible flood. And it washed out a graveyard, according to the story. And so they go over there, they pick up the gold, the pots, and these stones and flint or whatever they were buried in these graves, leave the bones laying around. And so they would bring these stones in and trade them to Dr. Cabrera. This is the story. And then he'd treat them medically. So after a while, he had enough, and he was a European, you know, a Spaniard, so he had a lot of European friends, and being a medical doctor, he had some upper income people would come, and they were, well, these are really fascinating, you know, so could we buy some of them? They may have sold them, but eventually, you know, I want to keep them. They were a collection. And he collected a lot of them. And apparently he hired some local people to make copies of them, or, you know, make me some with Coca-Cola in there, because I have tourists coming and they want to have a curio. So this couple, maybe 3 or 4 people, started carving these fake stones, selling them as curios. So the story that they're fake, some of them are fake, but there's 10,000 more that probably are not fake. The problem with them is the dinosaurs. You know, you can't have man and dinosaur interacting 800 years ago, because that's when they say they were carved. Now, the detractors say, no, they're all fakes. They're made back in the 60s and 70s, and they're all fakes. Well, you know, you can't just say that. You've got to prove it. So there were a lot of these things coming up, and they were reportedly coming out of these graves. Well, that makes them, an artifact that you can't just, you know, it's archaeological artifacts have to be protected. So they came to this couple. They said, you know, if you're getting these out of these graves, you're fixing to go to jail. Oh, no, sir, we make them. We make all of them. Because you don't want to go to, if you got 8 kids and your partner's got 8 kids, you don't want to be going to jail.
No.
You know, no, sir, we made them. And here, we'll show you how we made them.